Hello and welcome to the third episode of Devlog. In this series, we're building an ambitious payroll SaaS from scratch all the way to our first customer. In this episode, we're going to set up our database and user authentication. Before we start, there has been a change of plans. In the last episode, we decided that we'd be using Firebase for the database and user authentication. However, after some more research, it makes more sense to go with a relational database. Payroll systems are typically complex, need to manage relations between different data entities, and don't typically require real-time updates, which are areas where a relational database excels. With that being said, instead of Firebase, we'll be using a Postgres database, Prisma as our ORM, and Auth.js or next-auth for our user authentication. Look at us, dude. Postgres, Prisma, Auth.js, who are we? This is professional. Before we get started, let me show you what I did off camera. Firstly, I tweaked the outline so it works on the mobile view. It's nothing crazy, but it works for now. I also set up Cypress for end-to-end testing and wrote up a very simple test for the navigation. I love that there's a UI for the testing and that it shows you what it's doing at each step. The code is very intuitive as well. Look how clean this test case is. You can't directly compare Jest and Cypress, but honestly, Cypress is a breath of fresh air. I love how intuitive it is and it's just so nice. Alright, let's get this episode started. First up, authentication. Alright, to install the authentication package, we can do npm I next-auth. From there, we can create an API auth next-auth route file so we can set up our authentication providers. We'll be using Google to start off with, and next-auth luckily has very intuitive support for Google authentication, so all we need to do is set our client ID and secret. From there, we can navigate to API/auth/signin, and we're greeted with a default sign-in page and our sign-in with Google button. Which doesn't work yet, because we do not have the ID and secret. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty tedious to get a Google project set up, but I managed to do it, and we have our credentials. And we're in. Perfect. Now we can set up an auth provider so our entire app knows whether the current session is authenticated. We can wrap it around our main layout to accomplish this. Next, we want a sign out button to make sure everything is working. So we create a basic button and call the next-auth sign out method on the button click. It doesn't look like it's doing anything, but let's redirect the user to log in if they aren't already, and then we can see it working. Look at that, dude. Google authentication. Incredible. Next, we can yassify the login page and make it all pretty. It took me way too long to get a custom sign-in page set up, and for no reason, because the final implementation was so straightforward. All we need to do is redirect the sign-in page to a custom one using the pages property of our auth options. This path should match a file under the pages directory. Then in the custom page, you just throw a bunch of styling together. I'll clean the file up later, don't worry, I know it's kind of a mess. But here's the result. Isn't it beautiful, sleek, modern, absolutely fantabulous? I think yes. You know what? One more time. Oh, and I realized these buttons weren't aligned, so I fixed that and yassified the sign out button as well. On to the meat and bones of this episode, or I guess beans and celery if you're vegetarian, but setting up Postgres and Prisma. We're going to use Neon, a free, easy to use, scalable, serverless Postgres. We can start by creating our project, Nobility Pay, with the region set to Ohio since that's the default. We're immediately given a connection URL for the default database, but we're going to create our own, Nobility Pay, and a shadow database to be used by Prisma. Heading back to our project, we can run npx prisma init to get Prisma set up. From there, I put together a basic initial schema that consists of the database URLs and some boilerplate tables I found on the internet. To get this going, we run npx prisma migrate dev. Look at this incredible IntelliSense. It makes it so easy to grab the data we need. Alright, next we'll want to integrate Prisma with our authentication. So we install the Prisma adapter for next-auth. From there, we simply pass the Prisma adapter into our auth options. Alright, let's make sure everything's still working. And I guess it's not. Awkward.
Everywhere I go, I see his face.
Well, it turns out now that we have an adapter set up, we have to pass auth options into our get server session call. Let's try that again. Very cool. Before we move on, now that we have authentication set up, I want to try displaying the user's name right on the dashboard. We can grab that information off the session data. Nice, a little greeting for the user. The only issue is the second or two it takes for the name to load up. I do not like this, so we can pass the session into our auth provider so the use session hook can use it as the default value before it's done getting the data itself. With this, there is no delay on refresh. This works well, but let's add a ticket to the backlog to determine the greeting based on the user's current time. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Believe it or not, that's it for this episode. We got quite a bit done. We set up the initial database, we got Google Authentication running, a nice login page UI, and we're feeding the entire app with session information. I hope you enjoyed this episode. In the next one, we'll try to finish up the remaining handful of setup tickets so we can move on to the next epic. If you're new to the series, make sure to subscribe to follow the progress of the project and see where it goes.